So, you know, in Number, they do all that cooking ritual because remember in Numbers 11, you know, as remember during the first Exodus with Moses, we're crying to eat flesh. Remember, the Lord said he sent them bread, but instead they didn't want the bread, that they wanted flesh. Remember? So let's go into Numbers 11:18 and say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and ye shall eat flesh, for ye have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt, therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat. Remember when he gave them flesh, what happened? Remember they ended up being buried. The plague was sent. Remember he sent the plague through the quail. So you understand the whole thing of eating that flesh is serious because it goes to like that whole thing of original sin, like I explained a few years, like a little while back. So that whole thing goes to that original sin, of the tree of life and of death. Your eyes will be open, you be as gods, because you know it goes to the living animal, and it goes to that death when they kill, and then now it goes into the whole aspect. When you understand how the digestive system works, the digestive system works to where you eat, and your belly is like the pit, it's like the belly. You know, that's why it goes into the whole theme of the pit. It goes right through the digestive system, and it gets sent down into the bowels. Because remember, as it's written, the word of God, remember how it speaks about the bowels representing like going into the earth. Remember it said how Christ spent 3 days, 3 nights, you know, in the bowels of the earth. So that whole thing goes into that whole aspect. It represents the pit. Remember, the body is a temple of God. So when they're doing that, it's like, you know, you basically playing God. You the one who making that choice of what gets sent into the bowel, into the pit. It's just symbolically why it's like that. So, you know, those witches know that. Those warlocks know that. That's why they focus on how they feed people. That's why they tell people you should eat 3 times a day. Eat your eggs. Eat your sausage, you know, and stuff like that. Everything they show, McDonald's, everything they show is advertising death. You know, it said, you know, God is the God of the living, not of the dead. So that's why they already had it set up where everything will be, the woman to be cooking her husband, you know, flesh. Because that goes back to Adam and Eve. Like I explained it before, that's how they got cast out the garden. You know, that's what the serpent taught them, was the ways of death, life and death. Ye shall not surely die once you eat this thing. You see what I'm saying? And that's why they do it throughout, you know, throughout the way they train the women. You know, you cook your man a steak, you cook them some wings, you know, you cook them some chicken Alfredo, cook them some spaghetti with some catfish. You know, it's all connected. And that's why they use women in the banks. You know, women, like I explained, different careers. They use the women they use that are agents that they set up in there, the bank tellers, etc. The CNAs, like I explained in the previous videos, the flight attendants, you know, etc. Because the banking anyway goes into the treasures of heaven blasphemy. You know, Lucifer was cast out of heaven, so he remember all of that. So, you know, at the end of the day, he used it on the earth. He remembers it's written, Satan is the God of this world, but Christ is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, bringing the new kingdom of the Father. So that whole thing is very important because, you know, the whole aspect of dealing with the treasures of heaven, because the kingdom of heaven is as a bride anyway. So that's why they like to use the women dealing with the treasures, you know. This stuff is serious. So that's